You're listening to the Lawyers with Purpose Practice Success Podcast, hosted by Lisa Rozier, featuring attorney Dave Zampano, along with frequent guests. Whether you're a seasoned estate planning attorney, an attorney looking to add estate planning and elder law to your existing list of practice areas, or you're just starting out, this podcast will give you a solid plan for success. Listen now as Dave and his guests share their personal journeys to practice success and the insights they learned along the way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Practice Success Podcast. I'm Lisa Rozier with attorney Dave Zampano, and our special guests today, David and Julie Salter from Salter Law, based out of Minnesota. Hi.
Hi. Hello, how are you? Nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So before we jump into the great conversation, how's the weather and everything up in Minnesota?
You got to ask that in Minnesota. Well, it was 80 yesterday.
Very warm.
It's expected to snow on Sunday. So that kind of gives you a sense.
I love it.
You got to be nimble.
David and Julie, if you could give our listeners an idea of your background, how you got to where you are, what roles you currently play in the firm, something like that, and just for baseline.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I've been an estate planning attorney for almost 30 years. It's hard to believe. That kind of surprises me when I think about it. I already have, second generation kids, clients coming in. I've been Salter Law LLC for about 7 years. Prior to that, I worked with a friend, a small law firm. It was myself, my friend and colleague, his sister, and then kind of a family-run thing like us is their mother was our firm administrator, jack of all trades. And I purchased the firm from him about 7 years ago and have been, the first 4.5 years, I tried to wear all the hats and run it on my own and realized I really couldn't do that. And then Julie jumped in about 2.5 years ago to, help me move along more, not in the law aspect, but more in just the running a business aspects.
So the more administrative parts.
Yeah. And my background, I don't have a legal background. My background is in training, actually. So I did both soft skill training and software training, and at various corporations, and here with the Science Museum of Minnesota locally, and taught corporations how to use like the whole Microsoft Office suite and how to type code, HTML, CSS, web code. And then I did a freelance web design business for a while. And then, but mostly I was just in corporate training for many, many years. So that was my background. And I really started helping David with just the books. I think he just needed someone to get into QuickBooks and do the data entry. And that's where I started. And then it was the webinars and seminars, right?
At least I was smart enough not to at least let Julie do the books the whole time.
Yeah.
And I don't know how smart that was. There was one point.
Well, I don't want to get, but I mean, my wife controls my books too. So,
Well, there was one point where I think you even realize you need to know even more as a person, knowing accounting and knowing how that affects a profit and loss statement and all that. So I remember one day I had a dividend check that I was trying to figure out how to do the data entry for. And I called our tax accountant and she goes, "Oh, just put it on this line in the chart of accounts." And I said, "Oh yeah, of course." And I hang up and I said to David, "Who are you hiring for your bookkeeping?" I mean, she didn't even know that there was that line in the chart of accounts. I'm like, we got to get better at hiring. I mean, so it was me, but anyway.
Well, right, exactly. What I love about that, Julie, is, we've talked about it before. Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy wrote a book, Who Not How, and we have translated it to who-ness. And that is understanding that all of us have a who-ness. We're all really good at some things. And there's other things we're not so good at. And the trick to success in business, and one of my experiences has been to stay focused in the areas we're really good at, and then work with other people who are really good in the areas we're not. So I love that story you tell, simple, but I want to say 99% of the people listening to that probably can relate to it personally. And they've had that happen in their own practice,
Right.
including me. And I'm a CPA, right? And an attorney. So I think that's a very accurate statement. So Minnesota, you're in a unique state, but every state's unique. Talk about your practice. So David, you've been doing this almost 30 years. You worked with a friend who had kind of a family thing going on, and you took the firm over about 7 years ago. And then the last 2.5 years, which if I go back 2.5 years, that's the beginning of COVID. So it sounds like right at the beginning of COVID, you get this epiphany. Oh, I think I'll just go buy a law firm. So what's transpired since then?
Well, no, so I bought the law firm 7 years ago. So it was about 2 years ago, right at the start of COVID, when I had the epiphany, like you were just saying, that I couldn't be the lawyer doing the legal work. I couldn't be the client services coordinator. I couldn't be the funding person. I couldn't be the estate administration person. I mean, I couldn't do it all. So
well, I would say you could, but you couldn't do it well, right? See, and the reason why I say that so many lawyers I work with over the 30 years is they are doing it all. They're just not doing it well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did do it all. I just, it was really difficult. So that's where Julie really jumped in. And I should say, right away when I took over, Julie said to me like immediately, you need to let me help you. And, being a bit of a control freak, I didn't let her. So I think we would be a lot farther along if
I think that comes with the JD degree, doesn't it? The control freak degree. Yeah.
If I'd listened to her and let her come along and help more right away. But I mean, with like the first 3 years, I think I did a pretty darn good job on my own. And then, COVID hit, and then things did get a little crazy. And so that was about 2 years ago when we joined with Lawyers with Purpose. That's when we're like, well, this seems like an organization that's going to, help us focus more on the being a business as opposed to just, being a law firm that's trying to, get the legal work done, make the clients happy. Because I always, when I took over from my colleague, we had a huge book of business. I had people passing away. So I had administration business. And I really thought, well, and it was all referrals that I was relying on. I figured I'm going to have enough referrals coming in where I'm not going to really have to do any marketing. And I think that was pretty much the case for the first couple of years, but then it became pretty clear, no, I'm going to need to do some type of marketing to get some more business in the door. But in the realm of all of my things that I was trying to do, marketing was probably kind of down at the bottom. So,
and I think, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and I think, so yes, right away, I did tell you, you're going to need some help. And right away, he pushed back. And I think part of that could have been a husband-wife dynamic. I mean, who wants a nagging wife when you're starting your own business in your face, right? And I think there's a fine balance between work and home that you really have to respect. And so I did nag and got pushed back and realized I can't push. And so I just came in and I would do the books and I would just listen to them. And I have to say, I do think that actually helped not only me to help him in the future, but it helped our marriage because I realized how much he knows. I was like, wow, I did not really, you never sit with your husband at work and listen to them.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, he is really good with clients. And wow, he really knows a lot. And wow, this is really important. And so I think after doing the books for 1 or 2 years, when he did have that epiphany that he needed to market, I was like, well, I think I can help you with that. I've done online training and I can put together some webinars and some seminars. But then I had to learn estate planning. So I've got this 30-year-old expert and me with no expertise. So that was a challenge, right? Him trying to teach me enough so that I didn't put something wrong on a slide. And that was interesting and yet really great, because now I think I know enough that I can at least answer some basic questions as the client services coordinator. And then I think also it helped me understand more of his process, although a lot of that was in his head. And so I think that then hit us later, because we're still working on operations, you know what I mean? But I think it's all just been a real journey. So I think we needed that. I needed to give him that space, because he needed to have that epiphany on his own. I don't think there's any way when that pandemic hit that I could have said, we need to get out of our own little world and start working with others to help us, had he not felt that pain by himself.
So that pushed you to look and explore, and you found.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of lawyers, they sit in their office and they do their lawyer stuff and they draft the documents, they read law review articles, and that's great because you have to do that. But you're in your little vacuum tube, and you gotta, and I mean, I know that that's what I was doing, and it's hard to break out of that and go out and say, yeah, I need to get some coaching, I need to get some help to address these other aspects of the business, as opposed to just being the lawyer.
Right.
Yeah.
Because even with marketing, so what he wanted to market on, tell him about your cabin trust business, because that's what I was helping you with, some of it.
Oh, so yeah, going back, this is at the old firm with my friend. We when we first started, it was the heyday of, you probably remember this, Dave, of the retail living trust marketing.
Yep.
Running the newspaper ads. We'd go out, we'd run the ads, we'd do twice a month, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 10 a.m., 7 p.m.,
Yep.
live seminars. And that was great. I mean, we'd have, tons of business. We were like 27, 28 years old. But then that quickly, that horse
Evolved. Yeah, it evolved.
It keeled over. But then we had a really good relationship with a Minnesota property casualty insurance firm, and that was great for a while. But then a new guy took over as the CEO that we didn't really see eye to eye with, so that sort of went down the road. But then 2008 market crashes, no one is, everyone's panicking. Came up with the idea of doing cabin trusts. Everyone in Minnesota has a cabin. I think New York, they call them cottages.
Camp trust. Yeah.
Yep.
Camp trust or cottage. Yeah.
So we bought from like Crow County, all the northern Minnesota counties. Went to the assessor and said, we want to buy your Excel list of everyone that has property with a metro Twin Cities zip. Did bulk mails. Not pandemic, market crash, 2008, 2009. We're getting 50, 70 people in live seminars. And that was gangbusters for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of think that we are the ones that sort of started that whole cabin trust market in Minnesota. So that was,
you didn't have a lot of competition.
And there was really not much competition. That really went good for a while too.
And then other people got into the market, and then that's when I think Frank sold you the firm. And so when I started helping him, we started doing some of those cabin trusts, and he was getting a pretty good, he would get 40 people, and he would get roughly 25% that would want to meet with him. And then he would start doing the cabin trust. And because he was solo and they're so customizable, it was taking a ton of time. So it goes back to one of your tools, Dave, that I thought was really beneficial for us. It's not the revenue focuser, it's the other one where you get to figure out your ROI on how much time you spend per.
That's the second part of the revenue focuser, and we also have the KPI focuser. So
Yeah.
those two things combined really, having an idea of saying, okay, how do I know how many of these I need to get to X number at the end of a month? What does that back all the way? We actually back it into how many leads you need, right? So the number of phone calls you need to have happen.
Which I think was so beneficial. I think that's a really beneficial tool for any firm to really look at. And I think the other one you have talks about what is your best ROI product, the one that you can deliver with the least amount of hours, but the highest amount of profit, or what's the profit rate on each of your services. And what David was finding, because he was losing interest in doing cabin trust webinars. And I'm like, but you're so good and it's a good market and you're known for it. And we had a RMS relationship with
Minnesota Lakes and Rivers
Advocates,
like
which
the,
we still have,
Yeah.
and we still keep in touch with them. And but he said it was too many hours as a solo, right, to put out that product and wear all the hats. So this is really right before when I was just doing the books for him. And I was like, okay, well, maybe that's not your target market. So then we started talking about that as a business concept. Like, what is your target market? Who do you want to bring in? Go ahead.
There's riches and niches, they say.
Yeah.
yeah, well, the cabin trusts they were custom. I mean, we had developed our own form. There wasn't really a form yet, so it wasn't like you go out and have, there was a software program that would, at that time, that would do a cabin trust. So, I mean, we would, normally we would be popping it into someone's revocable trust,
Right.
created on the second death. And
So, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, your journey. I'm looking at your journey. I mean, we could spend hours. I can do a whole course on husband and wife, the pros and cons of that. And I know the cons are as many as the pros. My wife worked with me many years. I want to say she worked with me the first 20 of the 30 years. And then 10 years ago, we grew, and I'm like, we really need to not have you in this role. I need to be able to have the company run without you or I, because if we went down together or something, we can't both retire at some point or whatever. So we started that process. As you've evolved, what are some of the key things you would say to people listening? This is the Practice Success Podcast. People are at all different stages of their careers. David, it sounds like you reinvented your career maybe a little bit here in the last couple of years. What's some of the challenges and some of the insights you would share with people who might be struggling with maybe reinventing themselves or figuring out that path?
Well, I think you just have to identify what's holding you back, identify what you are skilled at doing, and be willing to, admit that, I'm not going to go out and, do all the funding. I'm going to have to hire someone to do the funding.
So knowing your role in the firm and
Knowing your role,
and then getting the
and-
support in the other areas.
yeah, and I just, but I would say that it was sort of a reinvention, because I couldn't, I had all of this old book of business that I was just thinking I would just be able to sit on, and that would be able to be enough.
Resting on your laurels, they call it, right?
Enough revenue. And then it's saying, well, no, I've got to go out and hit the pavement again, like I used to do when I was a lot younger, and which is fine, but you have to realize that.
Yeah. I find though, when you do it the second time, you really come from a place of wisdom.
Well, yeah.
Like when younger, you just kind of go, you take everything on. And I think the second time around, I think you have a whole different sense of credibility and things of that nature.
Oh yeah, I think definitely. But no, yeah, when we were starting out, I mean, age 27, 28, yeah.
Well, and I think you're also, I mean, we had been married how many years at that point? Like, we got married in 2006, so that was, I wouldn't start this as a newly married couple.
Right.
But we were 10 years, we were at least 10 plus years married. And I think that has, so we had a trust, we had communication. It's not always, like I say, on our good days, we're like Chip and Joanna Gaines energy. On our bad days, we're like Liz Taylor and Richard Burton and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. But you have to have those conversations. And then some days we're Dumb and Dumber. I mean, like, and who's dumb and who's dumber
It sounds like
depends.
you've been into most law offices.
Right.
But I think,
But I think it's keeping a sense of humor about it and really being honest. Like, I love that you guys offered that virtual taper a while ago. It was just us two, and we were able to spend that time. We were supposed to be brainstorming on 2023 planning, but we still have leftover from 2022 that we know will be our 2023 planning. So we actually spent that time talking exactly what David just said. What's holding us back? Like, let's really be honest. And the beauty of a husband-wife team is you know each other so intimately that you can be 100% honest. You can't in a workplace always say exactly what's on your mind in the nicest way possible to your coworkers. Well, as David and I have enough of a trust built up where he can say to me, Julie, you're stinking at this. And I'm like, I am. Why am I stinking? Right. And so, like, for instance, operations, like, I'm like, why am I so stuck? And I'm like, I'm not good at this. David, you need to step in onto that role, right? I can do client service coordinator, I can do marketing, but you need to be more, which is operations. And so, like, just feeling that
Knowing your
out.
strengths and your roles, following the accountability chart or the organizational chart and the roles and responsibilities for each one of those boxes. Now,
Yep.
again, there's 4 or 5 key boxes. There's 2 of you. So you've got to fill those 5 boxes. You got to decide who's filling what box. But all that work's got to get done. And the more you could do within your own natural talents, the easier it becomes and the greater the result, right?
Yep. And we did just hire a writer for marketing because we just needed somebody who we can hire on an ad hoc basis to do that blurb type writing that David and I started and quickly went into the deepest rabbit hole for different reasons.
Yeah.
David went on a legal rabbit hole. I went on it. Is this even gonna work? Like, does this?
Yeah.
Sounds like you guys were aware. You were aware of the roadblocks, and
I think that's where you were saying about your age. I think both of us being in our 50s, you just are way more adept at noticing your own faults and admitting them and not seeing that as such a
not seeing it as a bad thing, but really looking at it as an opportunity
right
for things. Yeah. Agreed.
Right.
Okay.
So guys, as we wrap up, I'm sure some of our listeners are connecting to the conversation today. How can our listeners tap into your brains, get in touch with either one of you?
We have a website now, so that was one thing we accomplished. Our website is salterlawllc.com.
Perfect.
And do you need our number or so his
totally up to you?
Okay, well, our work number is 651-641-0001.
Perfect. Well, thank you. And any closing remarks before we wrap it up today?
Go ahead.
Well, I would just say, identify what's holding you back and figure out how to overcome it, whether it's you're going to do it on your own or whether you're going to find someone to help you do it.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is when you're hesitating on something, sit with that. There's a reason and write it out, because there were so many times where we were hesitating and I'm like, what's holding us back is we're so slow at decision making. I think really diving into your own decision making style. Are you a slow decision maker? Are you a fast decision maker? We are Colby fact finders. So we can, again, that can be both a blessing and a curse. And stopping yourself and saying, okay, I'm hesitating because I still have more questions, write them down. And then at least you know to get the answers to that question. And then also being honest with each other, like, we have enough research, let's quick make a decision. And so that, I think, just real stark honesty, transparency with your own working style.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's great spending time with you, and thanks for sharing your story. There's someone out there just like you saying, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do. So thank you everyone, we're all successful. It's understanding that success and sharing it with others.
Yeah,
Thank you,
absolutely.
David and
Thank
Julie.
you guys. Thank you for giving us some
Thanks, Dave.
tools
Thanks,
that really
Lisa.
helped us
All
too.
right. Sounds good. Well, for our listeners out there, if you want additional episodes, you can go to lawyerswithpurpose.com and click on the Practice Success podcast. And if you are interested in being on our show, you can always fill out the contact form as well. Everybody,
Thank
have a great day.
Thank you both. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Practice Success Podcast. Visit www.lawyerswithpurpose.com/podcast to listen to other episodes and to subscribe. We'll see you next time.